Well, welcome to our latest podcast, Never Mind the Chaos. I'm Leonard Simpson, partner with 2020 Financial Advisors, joined by my good friend and co-host, Michael Chastain of Chastain Jones Law. And we're really excited today to have one of our amazing guests with us to share with us her story and her journey. Attorney Lindsay Ingham of Ingham Law Corporation. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your journey and your the path you ultimately took to become an attorney. And I take it from reading your background that you are you a local Sacramento? Sacramento? I can't say it.
I'm
Sacramento.
not. I'm not
You're
actually.
not.
I grew up in Napa, and
Oh, okay.
I lived there most of my life. I left to go away to college. Both of my parents were not from Napa, but moved there when they were kids, and ultimately
Okay.
met in high school and were high school sweethearts. And um, uh, both of my parents, well, my mom was an administrative assistant, my dad was a contractor. Neither one of them went to school, to college.
Okay.
And my mom is really smart, and she got a number of scholarships to go to some really great universities. Ended up at UC Colorado at Boulder, went for one semester, missed my dad so much that she came home, got married, and had us, meaning me and my brother. So kind of long story short, I always knew that my mom regretted not going to college. And so there was always an expectation that I would be the one to do it. My brother was born with developmental disabilities. And so really, all of the pressure to be the
Yeah.
one to do that was on me. So I started out at San Diego State. In high school, I had a wonderful teacher who did a lot of work with the United Nations, and she was incredibly inspiring to me. And so my major initially was international security and conflict resolution. And I thought for
Mm.
sure I was going to be in the United Nations, or some capacity like that. Uh, I really wasn't like emotionally ready to be in college at that point. And so I did okay, but after 2 years, I wasn't doing as well as it should have been. And so I came home just to take a break. I think, one of the things that happened with me was my high school was not terribly challenging, and I didn't really know how to study. And so when I went to college, and it was a giant campus, and I'm in these giant lecture halls, and I just
Hmm.
remember looking at my biology book going, I don't even know what it is that I'm supposed to remember here. Like there's so many words, right? Like what do I
Yeah.
need to know? So I took some time off. I moved back to Napa, and while I was there, I met my husband, and he was there on a visa from Canada, setting up um, a wine label company. We had a whirlwind romance, and we got married, and I went back to college. So I transferred from San Diego State to University of San Francisco, where I majored in politics, still along the theme of, yes, I definitely want to do something. I don't know if I want to do international security anymore, but definitely in the political realm. And then, so my junior year, 2 months in, I learned that I was pregnant with my son. So the international security dream definitely was gone at that point, but still very interested in politics. University of San Francisco was perfect for me. It was a very small school, incredible instructors. I felt very supported, and I really, really loved it. In my senior year, I had the opportunity to do an internship for one of our state senators. And by the time I was finished with that internship, I was fairly certain I was not going to go into politics. My experience there really, I just remember feeling like, gosh, what a tremendous waste of taxpayer dollars. Like,
Mm.
just, busy work, just busy work.
Yeah, when you get to
Well, that,
watch
that
the sausage being made, it's actually not pretty.
Yeah,
yeah.
it really wasn't. And so I graduated with this degree. And as a kid, I did not know any lawyers, and I didn't know any doctors. But in my mind, those were the two paths to success, right? You're either a lawyer or a doctor. And I knew being a doctor wasn't going to cut it. So, politics, lawyer, that was going to be the avenue for me. So when I graduated from USF, I got a job as a paralegal in a law firm in Oakland. It was a great learning experience. And really ultimately kind of at the time I was thinking, do I want to go into public administration or law school? And that experience really like spurred me to, no, I definitely want to go to law school. Of course, I missed the deadline for the LSAT. And so I had to wait for it to come around. So I didn't start law school right away because of that. Then when I enrolled in law school, I went to like the orientation. I literally had just bought a house. I got a job here in Sacramento, all on the same day. And then the following day found out that I was pregnant with my daughter. So, then I had a conversation with the dean. My daughter was going to be due like towards the end of the first semester. And I was informed that they don't make any exceptions. And so, of course, there's an attendance requirement to law school. And so if there was any complications or anything that went wrong, I mean, let alone, like, let's say it was a perfect birth and I had to go back to school the following day, it wasn't going to work. So they allowed me to defer my admission to the following year. So then there was like another gap in my my time there. So then I went to law school, and I had 2 babies, and that was challenging. But I just, I knew I was never going to be in the top of my class because I couldn't. I had kids that I adored, and I just didn't have the time and energy to really put all of that effort into it. But I did the best that I could. I was a good student, and I graduated in 2011. And then I took the bar. That's kind of a funny story. So I took the bar and I was going to be taking it on my laptop. And so on the first morning of the bar, I thought, okay, gosh, I'm really sleepy. I'm just going to stop at Starbucks. I have a few minutes to do that. And so I stopped, and it was Midtown Sacramento, and you don't want to leave your laptop bag in your vehicle in downtown Sacramento. And so I went to go grab my laptop out of my car, and of course it wasn't there. And I did not have time to go back and grab it. So on the very first day of the bar, I hand wrote the whole thing. And so by the time the bar was done, I thought, oh, I failed it for sure, because and then I remember the very first question on the bar exam was the one area of law that I just was too tired to study. And so I thought, okay, not only did I not study this, but I don't have my laptop and I have to handwrite this. So when my results came out and I passed, I was shocked because I thought for sure I didn't. So of course I graduated at the height of the recession. And
well, so I just want to say, Lindsay, I mean, that that shows a lot of character. I mean, a lot of people would have just folded up their tent and gone home, and conceded defeat. But even though you had planned on doing it on your laptop, you'd practiced it, I'm assuming you'd done all that, and now you're having to actually handwrite it, which you're probably the only person in the last decade
Ever done that, yeah.
So, I mean, that, hats off for you for not giving up. Showing up
Absolutely.
is half the battle.
Yeah.
I actually think that happened, and it literally was the worst case scenario. Not only did I get the one topic that I didn't study for, but I didn't have my laptop. And at that point, any nerves that I had were just like, I had faced that demon, right? Like everything that could go wrong had gone wrong. And I thought, well, I have nothing to lose. And I actually feel like on some level it helped me because it got rid of the nerves and it really forced me to like focus with clarity. And I mean, obviously it worked because I passed, but I just, that was.
Yeah, that's a great observation, right? Because it's just like, what else can happen, right?
Yeah, and I didn't have coffee.
So
that's the thing that undermined me completely.
Yeah. So where was your laptop?
It was at home. It was at home. Yeah.
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 So
Yeah. Just
it,
chaos of trying to get ready in the morning and just totally walked out without it.
Okay, so you get past that demon, which passing the California State Bar is no small task for
No.
anybody, even under perfect circumstances.
right.
So, and in 2011, it was still a 3-day test, right?
Yeah, so I graduated a semester early and I was taking the February bar. So on top of, the nerves that are associated with taking the bar, the February bar is typically the bar that is being taken by most of the students who failed
Right.
the prior bar. So there's that kind of atmosphere also, right? There's a lot of like nerves and yeah, taking it with repeat test takers. So the fact that I passed was, I remember looking at the screen and I called my husband and I read it to him because I said, I think it says that I passed, but I just can't imagine that I did. Because it was just so shocking. So I graduated in the height of the recession. I passed the bar. I had a great internship that I really, really enjoyed, but there was a kind of changing of the guard and a change in direction in terms of what the firm was going to do. And so my thought was, the discussions I had was that I would be an associate there, but with these changes that happened, they were no longer going to be hiring first-year associates. And so I had to find a job. And of course, when I started law school, there was all this discussion about, oh, you're going to make all these great salaries and you can work in all these places and the loans are amenable to that. And there were no jobs. There was nothing. And so I, of course, was,
This is on the back of the housing crunch,
yes.
right? Where all of a sudden there's just no money anymore.
And actually it was really great. In our commencement ceremony, our speaker actually basically said, well, if you had graduated earlier, this would be a much different speech. But as you know, the state of the world isn't great, so good luck to you, right? Like that was the commencement. We all looked at each other like, wonderful. So the first job that I got, it didn't take very long because I ended up, I knew a friend who was an attorney who worked in that field of law, knew of a firm that was hiring that he used to work at, and said, hey, if you're interested, I can just let them know that you're looking for a job and you can take it from there. And it was the one area of law that I said I would never do. I had no interest in, but of course I needed a job.
That was workman's comp, right?
That was workman's comp. Yeah.
Which I joined you. I did some workman's comp as a paralegal for about a minute and realized I never want to see this again.
Yes. It just, to me, it was, well, and technically the job can be performed and is performed by people who are not attorneys. And it felt like, I had gone through all this. It was not a glamorous area of law.
Well, it's a big chart, right? I mean, a hand is worth this much, and a leg is worth that much, and an eye is worth, it's an actuarial thing put together by the state. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I interviewed there. I got the job. I was there for about 4.5 years, coming up on the mark where I knew if I didn't leave, I was never going to be able to leave. Because once you're kind of specialized in an area, it's very difficult to kind of change course.
And this was a very big law firm, right? With offices all
the
over.
largest in the state.
So let me ask you, how did you, aside from the practice area itself, I mean, how did you feel about working with a firm that had, I don't know, 50, 60 lawyers, I mean, offices all over the state?
I didn't know any better. And so I didn't know any different, right? I don't want to say better. I just didn't know any different. And so it was just kind of this big law machine and, the billable hours were very high. And there was very few women. There's very few women in the field. There was very few women in my office in particular, and nobody else besides me who had young kids. And so there definitely, I did feel pressure to be there in the morning, to be there late at night, to bill the hours, to be seen in the office, which I think is not, it's not, unique to that firm, but I didn't realize that life didn't have to be that way until much, much later. And so all I knew is I was doing an area of law I wasn't particularly happy with. I enjoyed the people I worked with, but it was just a grind. I mean, I was.
And you had
When
two
I
young
got out of,
kids.
I'm sorry, when I got out of law school, I mean, that was just the expectation that you would work night and day and weekends and, and all of that. And it took a long time to realize that that's not only is that not necessary, but it's probably not the best way to practice.
And Lindsay, you had your two young children home at that time. Right?
I did.
Yeah.
I actually missed my daughter's first day at kindergarten because I had a work function that I had to attend, which kind of comes into play much, much later. And when I was really evaluating what is important to me, what do I want my life to look like,
Right.
I will never miss a moment like that again. And I made sure that my daughter's friend, who was her mother was my friend as well, that the mom was there and walked my daughter into, but it's not the same. She's not her mom, right?
Yeah.
And when my son was that age, I was still in school, and so I did have a lot of flexibility, and I was able to be there for field trips and just volunteering. But by the time my daughter was in school, I was full on in work mode, and I didn't get to go to any of her field trips. I sent my mom instead. So yeah, it was very tough. It was very challenging. And again, I didn't know anything different because that was really the only, I mean, the other firm I had worked at in Oakland as a paralegal was that type of firm. And then again, the firm that I worked at here in Sacramento, there's an expectation of hard work like that as well. So I just assumed
so you just thought that was the way it was. Yeah.
Yes. So I was at that firm and really, knowing I needed to leave, wanting to leave, not quite sure where to go. And of course, I just spent the last 4.5 years not really practicing my legal skills. I mean, I got a lot of experience in hearings, in court, in depositions, but like you mentioned earlier, it's pretty formulaic. And so it's not a lot of opportunities to really kind of like stretch my brain and do legal research and legal writing. And so I wanted to leave, but I didn't know where to go. I wasn't sure that I had any, like, other than, the advocacy and the depositions and that sort of thing. I didn't know if I had any marketable skills because I just
you ended up there not by choice.
Exactly. So I happened to have a former colleague who reached out to me, said, "Hey, we're looking for someone to join the firm. Are you interested?" I didn't know anything about that area of law, but I thought, okay, yes, I need something else, right? And so that ended up being education law, and again, another really large firm. And in that role, I did have to do legal research, and I did have to basically learn things from scratch, but I was coming in as an older associate, having spent all this time. And so it kind of felt like, as an employer, I get it, but there wasn't a lot of patience there. And I didn't feel like I could really ask for help or express that I didn't quite understand what I was doing. And lessons were learned. I enjoyed a lot of what I did. But I would say personality-wise, that's really where I went. Okay, so I know I don't want to work like this. I know that I don't want to work under these types of conditions. I have to believe that there's something better. I have to believe that there's a unicorn out there that has all the things that I'm looking for. And I just was, I was looking for a job, and I happened to come across a posting for my former firm. And I had no idea that area of law even existed. It sounded too good to be true. And I ended up getting a job there, and it was a tremendous experience. It was really everything I needed at that point, kind of coming in, feeling like, and in hindsight, I think my whole life I've had a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? Feeling like well, it's just kind of like I lucked out when I passed the bar, right? Not that I was smart or I had studied and I deserved it, just that, well, I'm not quite sure how it happened, but yay, right? And so
Well,
I
did you ever
think,
have the nightmare that I had for years and years that you'd get a letter and they'd say, "Oh, we just made a terrible
you made
mistake."
a mistake.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
So I feel like, by the time I went to that last firm, my self-esteem was like not great. And I was doing a lot of soul searching about like, well, is everybody like this, right? Like, is there anyone who's nice and supportive and, has a life outside of the office? Like, does anyone? Um, and so I interviewed with the firm. I thought, well, okay, these people seem happy. And then I
Let
went
me
to
just
go work
jump in
there.
on that. I
Sure.
think that there's been I don't know if we were taught this way or it's just the expectation, but nobody ever talks about it. Nobody talks about this. Yeah, I'm really not happy with what's going on. But when they do studies, like the ABA, has reported that lawyers are the most unhappy profession in the entire country,
Mhm.
right? But who do you talk to about that when you say, you know what, I really like being a lawyer, but all this other stuff I don't like? And how do we fix it? So, you certainly weren't alone in that boat.
And I think, if you do say something about it, it's like, oh, well, that person's just like that. You just have to ignore them. Or, yeah, they're like that to everybody. It's not just you. Rather than, oh, I hear you. This seems like it's a problem. How should we address it? Right. And it's interesting that I went into the area of law that I'm currently in now, because I mean, it's kind of full circle moment, right? But um, so at my firm, my last firm, I went in there kind of a bit downtrodden, but optimistic. Um, Kind of feeling like it's like my last shot. This could be it for me in terms of law because I'm definitely not happy. Uh, and it was everything I needed. I had wonderful mentors. The area of law was so fascinating to me. I think it's so incredibly important. And
This
I
is
think
the workplace. This is the workplace campus investigation type of work.
yeah. And I think, some of my issue with my prior positions also was kind of feeling like I was just like churning paperwork and, not, if I'm working that hard, at least I need it to feel meaningful, right? If it's taking me away from my kids and my husband and vacations and anything really in my personal life, then it needs to feel like I'm doing something good. And I just didn't feel like what I was doing was like that. Um, so when I was learning how to do workplace investigations and campus investigations, I had excellent mentors. I had people that believed in me. And for the first time in my career, I really felt like, oh, okay, this is why I went to law school. This is why I'm a lawyer, and I'm a really good lawyer. And it just took some time to find that area that I would excel in. Um, but once I did, man, I'm so happy about my choices.
Got to go through a lot of doors to get there.
Yeah, a lot. Mhm.
Yeah.
So you were with a fairly large firm, and then it looks like you broke off and formed a partnership. So could you tell us a little bit about how that happened?
Sure. So when I joined the firm, it was really small. There was just a couple of offices and, a handful of attorneys, like hands-on interactions with my supervisors and really working as a team. I knew that they had aspirations to grow the company. Uh, I was kind of along for the ride until I wasn't, and really the pandemic is what caused me to ultimately reevaluate, like, what do I need, right? That was the first time in my life that I had spent as much time with my kids as I did. We spent more time together during that period than ever, even when they were babies, right? And I realized, because I was, in a more senior position and we are working remotely, I was working fairly autonomously. I didn't have a lot of oversight. Started to feel like, gosh, I could really do this on my own. Because there were talks about, having to come back into the office. And of course, I didn't want to commute, and I felt like I didn't need to do that. And so I just kind of put the wheels in motion. I was thinking, gosh, I'd really like to do this by myself. I think I can do this by myself. I don't know if I can do this by myself. And I started to talk to some colleagues of mine, just kind of throw around, what do you think if we did this? Like, are you interested? And there were a couple who were interested. And so, in September of 2021, we launched our own firm. By December, there's three of us. By December, there were two of us. And over the next, gosh, from December 2021 until December 2022, we hung in there. But ultimately, I realized that wasn't a good fit. And so, made the moves to start my own firm.
So let me ask you a couple of questions. So in the pandemic, how did that impact your area of law? Because it had different impacts on different practice areas.
Mm-hmm. It really didn't impact my area of law. Some of the forms of the misconduct changed a little bit because, there were like remote work environments. And so you had people like using social messaging, and like things were happening on Zoom and stuff like that. But mostly it didn't. And I think that there was definitely some concerns at the beginning of the pandemic, like, oh gosh, if people aren't at work, we're not going to have jobs. People aren't on campus, we're not going to have, investigations. And that just simply isn't true. People will always have conflicts, whether it's remote or in person.
Right.
So it really did.
That was during a period of time where, at least as to the Title IX investigations, there was a lot of pretty substantial changes that occurred. Isn't that right?
Yeah, exactly. One of the aspects that came out of that time that has persisted, and I actually think it's a really good thing, is that the Title IX hearings used to be held in person, and now they're held remotely. And I personally think that there's so many benefits to that, not requiring the parties to be in the same room together. I mean, you're dealing with allegations of sexual assault or sexual battery, sexual misconduct. And so it's a lot easier to have like that visual separation. And frankly, I think people feel more comfortable sharing their perspectives from the comfort of their own homes or rooms.
So you probably have a better outcome, right?
It's a better outcome,
So.
but I do feel like the process is, I think the process is easier on everybody who's involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I think we talked to another when we done an interview before, the issue of partnerships and that, and I think I had mentioned I had a mentor who said never have a partner, and I don't know if that was great advice or whatever. I never did, not totally because of his advice, but for a variety of reasons. But what was your perspective on that? I mean, you went from 3 to 2 to basically, running your own show.
Yeah. I think that people are complicated, and it's one thing to be work colleagues and quite another to be partners. And I think it's like a marriage, right?
Yeah.
But in a marriage, you've had a period of courtship, and you understand how each other works and what your mutual goals and dreams and aspirations are. And in a business, those things don't necessarily come out right away. You have to really, really, really know that person and know all sides of that person, right? Who they are in business, what's important to them. And those conversations are incredibly important to have with a potential partner. Like, what do you want out of life?
Yeah. Difficult to have.
How are you with money? right? Like, are you thrifty? Do you like to splurge? I mean, do you want to grow? Do you want to supervise people? Do you want to just live in a bubble and just, keep on keeping on? Or do you want to expand and grow and move and train? And it's all of those conversations are incredibly important conversations to have. So there was definitely a period of time where I would have agreed with the sentiment, never get a partner. Just because, it was a challenge to start and stop and start and stop like 3 different businesses in a span of a year and a half. But, with a little bit of like growth and experience and time, I don't think it's a bad idea to have partners. I just think it's a bad idea to go into business with somebody that you haven't had those really deep conversations with. Just to make sure that you're on the same page.
Yeah. Well, and different people have different, I mean, as you kind of point out, have different emotional reactions to money. And, as you know, I mean, there's a whole business side, regardless of what practice area you're in, there's a whole business side that's got to be managed. And not everybody's really good at that or even up to it. So. How did you guys divide that up? Was one person more on an administrative back end side of that?
Yeah. I did that.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess, also on that kind of that vein is you need clients, you need to run the business, you need to do the job. And so having conversations about, all right, who's going to be responsible for the administrative side? Who's going to be responsible for the marketing side? What does that look like, right? And again, if you have people in business, one of whom, really wants to grow and expand and hire, your marketing is going to look a lot different than somebody who just is, content with what they have and, doesn't particularly want to market because they're fine, right? And so that's where those conversations about what do you want, what is important to you, what does your ideal business look like?
Well, that marketing, I was gonna say that marketing thing's a little insidious, right? Because, if you take your foot off the pedal for a while, it may take years to bring it back.
Exactly.
So it's a tricky, especially today and in Sacramento. I mean, there's so many lawyers, there's so many people competing for position that it is tricky.
Yeah. So you've been at this year and a half, about a little over.
I have been self-employed since September of 2021, but I have been the managing shareholder of Ingham Law Corporation since December of 2022.
Right. So what are your long-term plans? Where do you see the practice going?
Well, I went into business with partners because I really didn't want to work by myself. And so my plan, currently I'm working on bringing in a senior associate that can kind of hit the ground running. Ultimately, like 2-year plan would be to have like 2 junior associates, and trial run the senior associate to see if if partnership is potentially on the table. But I enjoy, especially in this line of work, being able to work through problems, discuss different aspects of a case, collaborate on how to approach things, train other people, all of those kind of group activities. I think I'm a social person, and I don't like to work by myself.
I know some of the guests we've had on, I think there is a challenge out there. Mike, can speak to himself when he was active in his firm in keeping associates, finding them and keeping them. It seems a bit different mentality out there now. among some of the younger attorneys?
I think um, I think how I feel about that is I am going to be the boss, or I am the boss that I always wanted. And I feel like, the benefit of the experiences that I had showed me exactly what works and what doesn't work. And, ultimately, I think that I will bring on employees with the expectation that they are able to realistically balance work and personal lives, right? Like that is so incredibly important to me that we are all whole people. And I certainly am not going to hire somebody who's just going to take a million vacation days because you need to work. But I am not the sort of person that work is my whole life. Yes, I do work a lot, but I do it, in a way that works for me, and I'm able to maintain my personal boundaries and prioritize my personal life as well. And it's important to me that I hire individuals that want the same thing.
All right. One of the things
Obviously,
I found very helpful was to have very clear expectations, measurable expectations. So that everybody knows exactly what is expected of them, and then you can clearly determine whether they're meeting those expectations. And it sounds maybe to some people a little harsh, but the bottom line is that you need a certain number of billable hours in order to afford them.
Exactly.
And there's work that needs to be done. And my experience has been, and I think some of our other guests have echoed this, that you know some of these new lawyers, they come in and they don't expect to stay more than a couple years, and then they're gone, and they leave you holding the bag, right? You still have to deal with the clients. You still got to make sure that everything is done, and they just take off, which is very concerning to me. That somebody would leave their clients literally, basically, I'm done, I'm out of here, right? And you're on,
Yeah.
you can figure that out. It took it. I mean, I even did a trial up to this year. I mean, I literally sold our firm in 21, and I'm just finished our last trial because I just don't believe that you leave people hanging like that. You commit to do so. It's been yeah. I saw a different. I don't want to say it's a work ethic. I don't think it is, but just a different level of expectation that these folks just are not planning on staying,
Mhm.
which makes it hard to spend the resources to train them.
Yeah, I've thought about that too. Like, what what if I were an employee of someone else? What are the types of things that would make me want to stay, right? It's not a pizza party. It's not lunch, right? Those are nice, but those ultimately don't mean anything. And so I've been really conscious about setting up, what do I need to make a profit, right? Because ultimately I'm not just doing this out of the goodness of my heart. So what do I need to make this work for me? And really in kind of figuring out, well, what does that look like and how many billable hours? I'm very mindful of keeping it, making a profit, but also making sure that it is consistent with my
Right.
values, which is having this balanced life. Um,
And
and I have respect for my prior employers for things I didn't even know about, right? Like until you start paying other people, you have no idea what payroll taxes are
right.
and cost of healthcare. And so really being transparent about like this is your total compensation package. These are all of the things that I as an employer are going to cover for you.
Right.
Including like a wellness package or again, flexibility with where you want to work. I have a beautiful office, but if you do
Well,
good work.
and part of your responsibility, I believe, as a business owner, is you're a steward of that business. You owe it to the shareholders, even if you're the only one, to make it profitable and to be properly insured in case something happens, to have enough money sitting in the bank in case there's another. So like for us, when COVID hit and all the courts shut down and the restaurants and the bars shut down and our DUI practice disappeared,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
we had cash in bank so that we could fight through that period of time. Uh,
Hmm.
but for those who didn't, because they weren't, good stewards of their corporation,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I don't know, they lived off Visa, or I don't know what they did, but it couldn't be pretty. So I have always thought that as a business owner, you have a fiduciary duty to your employees to keep the business alive so that they can have a job.
Absolutely.
Very
Absolutely.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many associates do you have now?
I don't have any that are full-time. I have a contractor who works.
Okay.
That's it right now. Yeah.
It takes a while to build up
Yeah.
enough work
Yeah, it
to
does.
support a lawyer. I mean, lawyers are expensive.
Yeah, and it's not for lack of work. I've been very fortunate in that regard. It's that I simply do not have the time. Like I have not in the past 2 years been able to press pause on my own
Yeah.
cases to bring somebody else in and bring them on board and train them. Like I literally don't have the bandwidth. So that's why like I've been kind of working it out, trying to I have someone in mind, trying to bring them in. They're experienced. I don't have to train them, right? I know that they can come in and just hit the ground running and do good work. Later on, once I have, more support, I would love to bring in, younger associates, even like first year associates, because I think there's a benefit to being able to train people up exactly the way that you want them to work. But for now, I'm looking at seasoned workplace investigators and campus investigators.
I mean, it's a vicious cycle, right? I don't have the time to
Yeah.
actually figure out how to
Right.
make the time. Um,
Yeah.
and I will tell you, there is help out there for that. There are ways to figure and navigate that because everybody can fall into that trap.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a balance, right? It's all about navigating and balance, and
Mhm.
we all face that as business owners. Yeah, absolutely.
Summertime is the hardest time for me to find that balance because I'm
Yeah.
in this beautiful office building and I see the trees and the sunshine and I'm right down the street from my tennis club and all I
It's,
want is go play tennis.
yeah, you're right by the river.
Yeah, this lovely weather.
Yes, yes, it is. So what else? What else do we would you like to share with us?
Um, I mean, I think one of the most important lessons that I've learned, and I know that this is not unique to me. I think that a lot of us have the affliction of imposter syndrome. And by imposter syndrome, it's really a sense that you don't belong in the room. You just kind of lucked out and got there.
Yeah.
And you didn't become successful because of your own hard work or intelligence. It's just kind of the way things worked out. And so there's always kind of a sense that at some point, the other shoe could fall. And so they're going to find out that I don't belong here. And I think what ultimately, obviously I did a lot of work on myself, but the most helpful thing for me, the thing that was the most beneficial was really working with people who truly, truly were invested in me, that really wanted me to be successful, believed in me, put in the work, and really had, like a personal connection with me, knew my kids' names, that for me was the first time that I felt like, oh, you know what? I do belong here. I can do this. I am capable. I'm great. I'm great. I'm great at this. But that, I think, just having a supportive work environment, if you bring somebody in and you want them to be successful, put in the time, put in the work. And that's so incredibly important to have somebody believe in you like that.
Yeah. So it sounds like you had some great mentors along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, I very much appreciate your time and perspective. As I said, you certainly are not alone in a lot of those
Great.
kinds of feelings. I think that law schools uh, kind of, well, I don't know. I'm no expert on law school, but I went 40 years ago. But the you know, I'm not sure they're showing the whole picture of what really goes on. You run a business that provides a legal service. And when was the last time somebody actually addressed that? I think there's more and more people that are starting to come awake and go, you know what, this is a business and we do need to be profitable, at the same time being fair and equitable and providing the best representation that we possibly can. And all those things, mesh, right? If you're worried about paying the rent, I often say this to people that I consult with. If you're worried about paying the rent, you're not working on your client's case,
Oh, absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So you got to get past that. I'm not sure because I was there when I opened my firm, back in '07. I would often be staring at the roof going, I don't know where the rent money's coming from today.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you get past that, and there's a whole lot of strategies and ways to do that. But when you do finally get past that, boy, it does open up a lot of opportunity. So,
And I think, owning and starting your own firm is not for the faint of heart. I mean, it really does take this kind of dogged persistence that it's all going to work out, right? And the uncertainties of, I cannot force somebody to pay their invoice. I cannot work with them again if they pay me late, but I have no control over that. And so really it's like what you were saying before is having the utmost respect for the health of the corporation and making sure that you as the business owner are taking the steps that are necessary to protect it. And sometimes it's hard conversations and sometimes it's not working with somebody again or it's all sorts of things, but it is a challenge. It's the most aside from taking a chance and getting married to my husband and having my two lovely children. It's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done.
right.
It's
Well, there's definitely an illusion of technology that somehow technology is going to be the answer to all the problems, but technology is nice, but in many ways it just makes things way more complicated. For
That's so
me,
true.
when we did stuff on Excel spreadsheets by pen and paper, life was so much easier. You know, um, and then we started doing, various. I mean, and there's some great software. I'm not downplaying it, but oh my God, if it goes belly up or glitches or whatever, the whole office can come to a complete and utter standstill. Because the power went out or there was a virus that popped in or the hundred other things that can occur. So
yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's so true. Well, there's no going back.
no. Well, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, maybe they now have anti-smartphones, right? Where you can you can get your GPS and you can get your email, but you can't access the internet off of it.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, that's not a terrible idea, actually.
No.
So,
No, I often joke that harken back to the days when we had pagers and Franklin Templeton daytimers.
yeah.
Yeah.
I most of my career was spent that way. Cell
The
phones
challenge
did
was
not come
finding that
around.
payphone that worked. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And
cell
finding
phones
some
did
loose
not come
change.
around until I've been practicing for 30 years, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
It's true in
in
a
a
way.
meaningful
Yeah.
way. I had
Yeah.
a BlackBerry, but
I had
Oh
those
my
as
gosh,
well.
my husband was
Yeah.
talking about, he had a BlackBerry when they first came out for work. And somehow we were talking about the BlackBerry and my daughter said, what is that?
yeah. Oh, it was the bomb at the time.
Cutting edge
It was.
technology is what it was.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was. Yeah. Well, Lindsay, it sounds like because of the people you uh, came in contact with, those people that guided you, that provided you with that human side of it, right? That human element of it, that it's certainly going to make your ability to grow practice and to bring in people, nurture them because of the way people treated you, right? So
Mhm.
that's a good thing.
It's a great thing. The other thing, if I were to offer advice, the one thing that I really tried not to do, and I tried not to do this in my personal life as well, is to not take things, not to be defensive.
Mm.
If I want to learn and grow and get better, I need to be able to accept feedback and not take it personal. If I've written something and it doesn't quite hit the mark, and my mentor, my supervisor says, "Hey, I really want you to work on this." Okay.
Yeah.
It's there's nothing wrong with me.
Right.
I just need to fix this document. And I think so many times people take that feedback as a personal attack, and then you just shut yourself off from the ability to learn and grow and improve and be a good teammate also.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the 4 agreements by Miguel Ruiz, right? Agreement number 3 is don't take it personal because it's not about you.
Not about you.
No.
Yeah.
So, and then the 4th one is always, you do your best all the time. Whatever your best is today, you do the best you can today. Yeah, those are good words to live by.
Absolutely. Well, Lindsay, this has been great. We're pleased that you were able to join us, and it was and sharing with us your journey and
Thank
your
you so much
story.
for having me.
Been our pleasure. All right.
All right.
Well, have a great rest of the week, the weekend.
Yes.
The week's over
almost
pretty soon. So good weekend. Yeah.
Sunrise in the early bird brought me to my senses. It's a chilly wind this morning, not a cloud in the sky. Today I walk the ancient trails among the petroglyphs